Hi, welcome back to the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. I'm Doug O'Brien, and I'm joined today with my good friend, Deborah Russell. Deborah has been coaching for, I think she said, a gazillion years. I'm not sure if that's a precise exact number, but it's a long time. She's been coaching mostly for the Tony Robbins organization. Maybe you know her. I met her back then in the Robbins days of yore, a long time ago in the 80s when we were both first starting out. But she stayed with Tony for a long time and has been coaching under his auspices for a long time. She has been one of the best that they have. And she's just an amazing woman. She really is working today mostly in leadership areas. Her company is called Upgrowth, as a beautiful logo that you'll see in just a moment, Leadership Upgrowth. And she's got a new program that she's working on called Structuring Your Day for Peak Performance, which is something that's always near and dear to my heart as a coach. How to get people to do that, because it's one of the things we must do, isn't it? To structure our days for peak performance and get our clients to do the same. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, and I hope you'll enjoy it when we come back from these little opening credits. See you soon. You are listening to the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast, a show devoted to uncovering the systems and the secrets that set the best apart, where you learn how to take your coaching clients to the next level while you grow the coaching practice of your dreams. So sit back and relax, or sit up and get excited. Either way, you might want to pay attention. This could be important. Hello, Deborah Russell.
Hello, Doug O'Brien.
Nice to see you. So you're in California.
I am.
And that's a really cool logo. That's the Upgrowth.
Upgrowth, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Want to tell us a little bit about that logo, just out of curiosity?
I don't know. I love the idea of it. I was just messing around. What can I say? Don't have any great story or anything, but I kind of liked it, and I made that and the Leadership Upgrowth, the O. Because I feel like the more we're all moving forward and up, and this is fun. I saw a young girl who was a hopeful for she was going to the Olympics, and she was a snowboarder. She was 18 years old. And the show was called Raising an Olympian. And they were interviewing the families of the Olympic athletes. And a lot of the people they were interviewing, it was very heavy. Like, oh, you got to get better and, get that gold medal and blah, 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 blah. And this girl, I fell in love with her immediately, because she gets up there and she goes, if I just get an 1/8 of a 16th of a second faster, I get so excited. And she was just so joyful about growing.
Nice. That's great.
And I just wanted to pinch her cheeks and go, you're so cute. But mostly it was this idea of, sometimes I think in personal development, business development, it can get kind of heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Like we need to, and we should, and we have to, and we must, and da 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 da.
Yeah.
And for me personally, I always do better when I make it lighter.
Cool.
And I play. And so I don't know. I like the idea of upgrowth and it just being fun.
Nice. Thank you. That's great. And it's a beautiful logo. It's really lovely. Well done. So you've been doing this now for, you said, a gazillion years, coaching with the Robbins Research?
Maybe a gazillion plus.
Oh God, that's a long time.
Sure. Well, I've been coaching. I've told my friends when I grew, when I was a kid, I still have my good best friends from grammar school, 2 of them. Really? And when I started doing seminars with Tony and coaching and doing all that stuff, I said, and I was a hairstylist in my previous life, and I was always coaching people, whether I didn't know what I was doing, but I was doing it. And I was down there, I can't believe I'm a coach now, or, teaching seminars and, helping people to grow. And they said, are you kidding? You've been telling people how to live their lives ever since we've known you in 5th grade. So apparently I've been coaching even longer than a gazillion years. Officially, I've been in this field for about 36 years.
So how do you mark that? Where did that start?
Well, I went to my first event with Tony in 1986.
All right.
And I came back, and as a hairstylist, I just started applying things I learned to help people feel better. And I
Okay.
doubled my business in 1 year, and I didn't become a better hairstylist. I mean, I probably was growing as a hairstylist, but people would start calling me and going, "I don't really need a haircut yet, but I really need to talk to you."
Really? That's great.
So I did that for maybe another year and a half, and then I started being a trainer at the events, and then I worked inside the company for a period of time.
You cut
And
Tony's hair, if I recall.
I have some good Tony stories about his hair, but yes. The only reason I cut his hair, I went to certification. You remember certification?
Oh,
I
yes,
know
I remember well, yeah.
you were a head trainer or master trainer or some kind of big trainer when I was there my first time.
Yeah.
And the whole time I was there, I kept looking at Tony's hair going, that poor man needs a better haircut. I have to help him. I really have to help him. And I was very shy back then. And I was, I had a phobia of public speaking and all kinds of things.
Really?
But my desire to help this poor man with this bad haircut was overwhelming.
And if it weren't for you, we never would have heard of this guy.
But then I go to cut it finally. There's a whole story associated to it. But anyway, I finally go down to the castle back then to cut his hair the first time. And he made me come and watch the person who cut his hair so that he could have two people, because he got his hair cut every 2 weeks. So I wasn't really paying attention because the whole point was to change his hairstyle, right?
His haircut, yeah.
And as I was leaving, it goes, I didn't feel like you were really paying attention. And I said, well, I wasn't on purpose, because that's got to go. And he would never let me change it. Never. And then when finally I was an executive at the company, I didn't have time for him and his haircuts, right? And years had gone by, and I said, Tony, you need to get somebody else to cut your hair. I don't have time. And he went to a salon in Beverly Hills, and they refused to do it. They refused to do that.
Yeah.
Thing that looked like he was wearing a toupee, and he would spray it, and then afterwards, when people would say, "Oh, your hair looks so much better," he goes, "Yeah, Deborah was the one who used to give me that bad haircut." Well, anyway, yeah. So I was guilty as charged, but really, I'm embarrassed that I cut his hair that way.
Well, I probably could have done it too. Wasn't very good, but yeah, that's funny. That's a good story. You've got probably a million stories, I'm sure.
A few. There are a few stories. Yes.
So let me ask you this though, because you have just, I think you said the R word, the retired word from Robbins.
I didn't retire, but I retired from Robbins. Yeah.
So you're no longer a coach at Robbins Research.
I am not. No.
Wow. How's it feel?
It's weird. It was weird. The first couple of months, it was very weird.
Yeah.
Because I've been, I worked at the company as director of training, general sales manager, general manager of all the events, head trainer. And I did that for a few years at the company. And then when we were doing that, we were traveling around the world and doing all the seminars and all the stuff that we did. And then I left for a period of time, stayed in touch with everybody, but I went out and I went and lived in Argentina. You know that story. I went and lived in Argentina and danced tango for a few years. And then they had started the coaching department. And when they started the coaching department, they probably called you too, but they called some of us, the old timers, and wanted us to coach to build this coaching, because there really wasn't remember we used to call it therapy, and it was we're going to go do therapy, and you couldn't do that. You weren't supposed to say that. Right? And then the whole field of coaching started coming into play, and Robbins started a coaching department. And they called me and asked me if I'd come and work on the flagship group. And I said, I'm headed to Buenos Aires to dance tango. I can't be bothered with that sort of thing. And then when I finished, I was like, I never want to get on another airplane as long as I live. I want to go home because I've been traveling for years at that point. And so I called him back and said, hey, you know that coaching thing? Okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to do it now. And I've been doing that for over 20 years, just the coaching part. Yeah.
Now, just out of curiosity, you didn't have to go into the offices to do that. You did that from your home?
The coaching, yeah. When I worked for the company, I had to work at the office. I lived in
I know. Right, but the coaching itself was done from your home because I've known like Bill Baker was working from his place in Colorado, and
no, it's been great.
Yeah, it's awesome. Really, very, very, very cool. Very, very cool. Yeah, I departed Robbins Research in 1995. I think was my last year there, but unlike you, I didn't rise up in the coaching ranks like that because I was partially on this coast. I didn't want to do that. But you are also pretty extraordinary. I mean, I went to a workshop you taught in New York about firewalking in a hospital. I don't know if you remember that. But I learned more from watching you do that workshop than I ever did from Tony teaching anything about, breakthroughs and wood breaking sort of stuff. And I was among the people that taught Tony how to do the wood breaking. Todd, I forgot his last name. Oh gosh, the chiropractor from New York City who brought wood breaking to Robbins Research. I've got a picture of me with him breaking wood in like 1986. So we've been doing it a long time, but still, you are amazing. The organization and the clarity of the coaching of the class that you taught there for breakthrough and how to then take that experience and integrate it into the organization at the hospital was just amazing. I mean, really,
that was a fun gig. I really enjoyed that. I was there for 11 weeks.
Wow.
And I did the workshop every day, 4 days a week for 11 weeks.
Oh my God, no wonder you're so good at it.
And that was a really, really fun one. And well, you know why I learned to get better at that was because the very first time I ever went to be Brian Biro, do you remember Brian?
No.
Well,
anyway, no, I do. BIR, yeah, I do.
Yeah. Anyway, he was doing a board breaking with about 300 people, and he had the people that have a smaller group, like the 20 or 25 people. And I had been in New York City 6 months earlier, and I was in a moped accident, and I kind of got hurt. I was pretty banged up. Wow. So I was joking around with somebody else that was they had another group over here. They didn't give us much training for doing it, right? The people that were leading these little teams. So they're all writing on their board what they want to break through. And I walk over to my friend who was from New York, New Jersey. And I walk over to him and I'm joking around. I said, you have to help me with my limiting belief. And he goes, what's your limiting belief? And I said, that I won't be able to get out of New York without getting hurt. Ha ha, joke, right? Walk back over. Now everybody's written on their board. And I go to hold for the first time ever. And the guy I'm short, I'm 5'1", and I go to hold, and I've got my hands out like this to hold the board. And the guy was like 6'2" or 6'3", and he was too tall. So instead of making him get lower, I held the board up in front of my face.
Oh, good thinking.
And he went through the board and hit me in the nose, and blood went everywhere. And I just said that. Talk about law of attraction, right? So I just said I won't be able to get out of town without getting hurt. So I go upstairs. I've got the ice pack on my nose and everything. And I'm thinking, wow, I am amazing at manifesting. The problem is my unconscious does not have a sense of humor. And I'm going to be much more clear. But after that, I got very serious about how to do it and how to teach it right and all of that because I had that experience.
It's funny. I did board breaking experiences for juniors in high school at this camp in New Jersey for about 30 years, actually. And for the first several years, I held the board for every kid that went through there. So I was holding the board for like 150 kids, and I had the same kind of experience. This young, like 17-year-old football player kind of guy just burst through the board and into my face. I didn't bleed quite as profoundly as you did, but still, it woke me up,
It woke you up. It does. Hello.
I decided I would not hold the boards for anybody after that. So I taught the importance of how to hold the board for other people. But it's teamwork.
I did a lot of teaching of how to hold the board for other people as well.
So I always said this is about teamwork. You got to have a team. So you have to hold the board for other people and be said as well as breaking through your own. So it worked.
Coaches can reframe things to suit their needs.
And of course, our friend, Rich, Rich Cooper does. He just puts them on a block of 2x4s or whatever, cinder blocks. So nobody has to hold it at all. He's just going down through that, and that works pretty much fail safe.
Yeah, I would always use that as my backup when people are having trouble with the other. Then I'd do that.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so what are you doing now? You're doing peak. What is it called?
Structure your day. Well, this particular workshop that I put out to the public is called Structure Your Day for Peak Performance.
Structure Your Day for Peak Performance.
And I started it as part of a series of workshops I'm doing for a company and the leadership team of that company. And I'm letting them drive the bus a little bit of what their needs are. And the first one, I sort of encouraged driving the bus on this one to, kind of encourage where the bus should go. But I really feel like if you're going to lead, whether you're leading yourself or anything, you've got to get yourself together about how you're going to spend your time and what you're going to focus on and what's most important. And when I used to be, I'm a reformed, I won't do anything related to time management person. Because I'm a free spirit and don't tell me what to do, including myself. Myself can't tell me what to do, and so I used to be very resistant to anything that felt structured or would box me in some way is how it felt to me.
Yep.
And I just, even when Tony had a time management program that he started teaching, this is how bad it was. I was an executive at the company, and he brought everybody in to this meeting, and he said, "This is the way it's going to be, and you've got to run things this way," and so on and so forth. And at the end of it, I said, "Tony, could I talk with you after the meeting?" And we went out in the hall, and I go, "You're the owner of the company. You have absolutely every right to require this. I'm not doing it." And I just stood there and waited for him to fire me, because that's how absolute I was that I'm not going to do this structured any kind of time management thing.
All right.
And when I came back and I started coaching, he had by that point turned it into an actual program. And I thought, well, if I'm going to coach properly, people are going to have read that or used that. So I at least have to understand it. And I started just doing a few things that focused my attention on what I was really wanting and needing and what I wanted to create. And I started finding that when I had a method, when I talk about it with people, I don't try to say, look, here's your format to do this and you have to do it this way. I try to give people mindsets around time and also some, useful strategies. Even if you just use one out of the 5 that I have, that would help. And so I started doing that, and I started realizing that the more that I designed how I worked with time, that not only did I not feel boxed in, but I actually accomplished more and felt more relaxed. And I started becoming fanatical about being aware of that. I love it because it makes me feel more free.
Yeah, exactly. It's a funny thing, it's funny you should say that because, I've taught time management, various things. I also never quite was able to do Tony's, was it OPA? Was that what it was called?
Used to be open, then he changes to RPM, but it was open when I refused.
The RPM, I remember that. But yeah, it's good stuff. It's obviously very logical, makes a lot of good sense. And I was never able to quite, discipline myself in that same way too. But I have, of course, stumbled upon things that work for me along the way. Because as a self-employed, entrepreneur, what is it called? A solopreneur, you have to. If you're going to get
work.
things done, you have to organize.
It's stressful.
Yeah.
See, that's what I didn't understand. I was resisting something that would make my life easier and less stressful.
That's right.
Because I'm going to be free.
Yeah, exactly.
And it wasn't, I didn't even know that it was like that. My daughter's a CFO for a big company.
Really?
And I remember her telling me about budgets. And I was like, oh, I don't do budgets. I mean, because that's got that same kind of feeling to me. Right. This was years ago. And she goes, she goes, well, I don't call it a budget. I call it a spending plan. And I go, okay, well, that's better than budget. I like that. But then she said, when I have my spending plan, I feel free.
Interesting.
And I felt like I couldn't understand the word. I mean, I understood the words she was saying.
You recognize them as part of
the. We could register with it. Right? I remember being in Argentina one time, and this person was saying something in Spanish, and I said, I understand the words you just said, but I do not understand the meaning of those words. That's how I felt when I was talking to her. I understand what you just said, but it doesn't make any sense.
Makes no sense.
Once I started finding a way to do it a way that worked for me, that's why I like to just give people strategies and ideas and then pick the ones that you think will work for you, because everybody's different. And when I finally started doing that, I understood her. And now I even understand it in the context of having a spending plan, because she goes, I just feel like I know I've got this available for my fun stuff. And so I don't stress. It's just like it's there. So now I can go spend it. Yeah. And I feel good.
And I think that's really kind of the secret of good coaching, is to be able to translate things into different languages for people to be able to understand it in the way that they need to understand it.
Yeah. You know? And flexible, just like with pretty much all of those. I don't want to say all, because I got beat into my brain not to use all, every, never. Most of the time, here's a book on goal setting, or here's a book on this, here's a book on that. That works for certain people and works less well for other people. So you pull what works and kind of like make your own, especially for the freedom freaks. I got to make it my own, but it's to me, it's exciting because I really do believe it frees people up, and that life is smoother and easier when you have some way of looking at it. And one of the things I talk about with time is that, people talk about managing time management.
Right.
And I go, well, time is just time. It is just there. That's an hour. You can't manage the time. The time just is, right? Yeah. But what I learned to do is manage me contextually to time, to understand it. And a lot of little things, like I was terrible at estimating how long things actually took. And if you can't get to a place where you have a pretty decent ability to anticipate how long something's going to take, it's a little skewed what you're planning for that day.
So give me a sample of this. So you're teaching a workshop pretty soon. It's like you said, it's a 90-minute workshop. It's
a virtual workshop. Yeah. 90 minutes.
And I was remember reading one of the things you said, that, help people shift the way they think about time to unlock peak performance. I think is what
usually the core issue is more of how we're thinking than it is about, like me. No, that's going to restrict me. Well, if I believe it's going to restrict me, then I'm not going to learn anything, because what's that old saying of the empty cup? If the cup's not empty, there's nothing to put it. There's no room to put anything new in. If I already have shut down, if my thinking is that, but there's so many beliefs that people have about time that whatever we believe, we're going to have some backup data to prove what we're believing is accurate, right? Correct or incorrect or whatever. We have our beliefs for a reason. For sure. We've had experiences and so on and so forth. And there's so many beliefs around time and money. I mean, think about it, those two are big.
So do you think you're teaching this workshop because it's something that you needed to learn for yourself? Is that why you're doing this?
I wrote a little book one time called 52 Secrets
Uh-huh.
that, to more success, fun, and fulfillment. And one time I had the opportunity at a bookstore. I was in town for a couple of weeks and I was doing book signing. The name of the book is I Almost Missed My Life. And I got that from a line in a play in New York.
Yeah.
Ellen Stritch?
Oh,
Ellen
yeah.
Stritch.
Yeah.
Yeah. She did a one-woman show and she
Okay.
said that. And I was like, that's the name of my book.
Right.
And I made it the name of my book when I heard her say it. But I had an opportunity. The manager of the bookstore called me and said, could you come? There's this other book that was kind of like mine, like 20 secrets to such and such or whatever it was. So the person who normally is running that book club, the weekly book club, can't make it. Can you come? And so can you come and help them with somebody else's book? So I looked at the book, and the chapter they were going to be doing was on boundaries, setting boundaries. And I said, well, do I have anything in my book about setting boundaries? And I started looking through. I had nothing about setting boundaries. And I went, why would I have anything about setting boundaries in my book? And I went, because it's not an issue. It's never been an issue for me.
Right. Right.
So I think I've mostly taught things that I either needed to learn or I'm still learning.
Right.
I'm still working on. That's one of the things I believe as a coach. I never go, oh, I got it all together, because that's BS. All total.
For sure. For sure.
So that was a long answer to the question, but yeah, I think that
You could have just said yes.
I know that would have been much easier and shorter and faster.
Yes, definitely those things. Yeah, not nearly as interesting though. I liked your answer though. But yeah, no, that's really true though, because it's not an issue for you. So you demonstrated setting boundaries when you said to Tony, hey, about that thing you said in the meeting. Yeah, I'm not doing that.
Not gonna happen. I've been doing that my whole life. I've just never had an issue with that. I'm reading it and going, okay, I guess other people do have an issue with that, but that wasn't mine. But like with my daughter, that's just the normal thing for her. The way she is around structure and money, and she's always been super responsible with it and everything. So it's not something she thinks about. It's just like, doesn't everybody think that way?
Right.
Yeah, no. Mm-mm.
That's cool.
Yeah,
no, but
when you learn to do something, I think there's more of just like we were talking about the board breaking, because I got my nose smashed. I got very focused on teaching it well.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And how to hold other. Yeah. But it's also interesting. I never used like eye equipment and stuff like that. I don't know when that started, that people were wearing protective gear.
I added that one when I was doing it in the hospital, and I was doing it for all of the managers. And a board broke in 3 pieces. So a center piece flew like a narrow and hit a guy right on his eyebrow and cut his eyebrow.
Oh gosh.
And I went, oh, okay. We can't have that, because it was just because the board broke weird.
Yeah, I know.
So I started using goggles after that happened.
Okay. Well, that answers that question. Thank you. So that's an example of a short answer. Thank you. No.
I'll try to do better.
No, I'm teasing. We actually want the long answers, because it's more interesting. No, so I appreciate that. It's an interesting thing about the freedom and stuff. I remember as a musician reading about Igor Stravinsky, how he would give himself limitations about the composition. Everybody thinks of him as being like this wild avant-garde kind of guy with the rite of spring, like boom, boom, boom. It was very, weird avant-garde music in the 1900s. But he said, though, he gave himself tremendous restrictions. He could only use these 4 notes or these 4 rhythmic patterns and stuff throughout this whole piece of music. He said the more restrictions he gave himself, the more free he was.
And I would suggest even more creative.
Right.
Freedom of creativity.
Yeah.
Because I wrote one of in my 52 Secrets. So you can go on my website, just deborahrussell.com. And at the top, there's for free, you can sign up for the weekly 52
Yeah.
Secrets. And I did little short videos, 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes. But one of them is about scheduling, and I call or constraints. Constraints foster creativity, I think is the title of it.
Nice.
And I did a little bit of research on it. And a couple of my favorite ones was that they were giving examples of famous people who are like what you were just saying, that had some of their most famous architecture was because they had to they didn't have all the resources that they normally had, and they had to build it into a side of a mountain or whatever it was.
Right.
But one of my favorite ones was, they said that, where did Mick Jagger get the Mick Jagger moves? And they said, because when they first started, he had these itty bitty stages and he had all this energy and he couldn't move around. So he did a lot of the jerky, weird stuff that he became famous for. And it was because of constraints.
All right.
And so if you can manage them in a way that supports you, and see, again, going back to the mindset's about time. There's never enough time.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of that, you actually have a lot more time on your hands these days because of your retirement from Robbins. You used to do what, 55 coaches a week or something like that when you were working?
Not a week, but a month. Yeah. 55. When I'd have them multiple times during the month. But yeah. And at one point I was at 88, and
wow.
then so
that's a lot.
And so yeah.
So now you get to do things like this. This is this is like your first of a series of workshops.
Yeah, I'm calling it a leadership in action series that I'm creating. And and it's fun because I have time to do it. I don't feel it's too much.
Right.
And I always remember Oprah when she was leaving her show. She said, after 25 years, she said that she had wanted to start her own network for years, but there was no way that she could do it at the same time that she was doing her show.
Right.
And one of her quotes was, "You can do everything you want, just not all at the same time."
Yeah.
And yeah, that's what it feels like. It feels like I have the space to do it, and in a way that I like, which is to be somewhat relaxed. I mean, I still have deadlines and things like that. That's why I set it up to do it with the company first and lead me into being able to offer it up to more people.
So you set it up for a company first?
Yeah, I'm doing it for this company right now. And so I'm doing 6 workshops for them.
Oh.
And then I'm taking those that I do for them and turning that into something that other people can purchase and show, in their own company or for themselves, or they could have me come and do it as a virtual. I mean,
Right.
I don't really want to go do it in person, but somebody pays big bucks on mine. And it was a cool place like New York.
Yeah, totally.
It's about creating it. There's a balance between, I believe anyway, there's a balance between creating what you want and having a certain level of realistic involved in it, right? I mean, especially in the short term, like what you can do longer term over time. You can do all kinds of things that maybe you didn't think were possible, but this week, this month, maybe not. So there's that balance between lots is possible. I'm a possibility person. I've done way more things than I ever thought I would ever do. And at the same time, there's a certain level of real world. Here's where things are right now, at least.
So what are the next series? What's coming up in this series? You've got this one for being able to structure your day for peak performance. What's after that?
The next one, I just gave it this morning for the first time. And I don't know if I'll keep this name, but maybe I will. But if you're going, especially if you work with a team of people or you work in a company or even at home, that you want to leverage something to somebody else instead of you thinking you have to do everything yourself. One of the things you've got to learn how to do is be able to delegate well so that you can let go. A lot of times what happens with people is they say, "Oh, delegating doesn't work," or "I've tried delegating, it doesn't work," or because they didn't know how to do it. It's a skill. It is a real skill. So the current working title that the company liked that they wanted is From Control Freak to Empowerment Geek. And it's about the reason, I think one of the reasons people don't want to let go of control is because their experience has been when they've tried to delegate to somebody else, it just didn't get done or didn't get done well or whatever. Right. And then they go, delegating doesn't work, or people can't be trusted, or all this other stuff. It's because they don't know how to do it. They don't have the skill sets to do it. Wow. And so that's the next one I'm working on.
So is that, again, something that Deborah Russell needed to learn? That's how that came to pass?
Oh, yeah, I have to control everything. Not really, but but I am a do-it-yourselfer, a DIYer. Yeah. And like, if a handyman comes to my house, I'm in there going, show me how you're doing that. I want to do it. Oh. So, but I've gotten good at delegating. It's not my nature. My nature is I want to do it. I want to do it.
That's interesting.
Finder, right? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to talk about myself for a minute.
Oh, do please go.
It's my podcast. I'm going to talk about myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I don't know, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, I was making my first website. I knew I needed one, and I knew friends of mine had made their own, and so I had this, crappy one that was sort of standing in, but I wanted to build my own. And I knew people that had, and neuro-linguistic programming is about programming. It's analogous to the computer. So you can program a computer. So, well, I can program a brain. Maybe I can program a computer. So I started learning how to do that. I took courses in it from this guy at college, and I built my own website, and it didn't work. Long story short, I mean, it worked, but the store part on it didn't. I couldn't sell anything. And of course, that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to sell tapes and CDs and stuff online. So I went to the instructor and I said, can I hire you to help me fix this? Because I can't fix it. And he said, sure. It's $200 an hour, and I've got an opening in a couple of weeks. I said, oh man, I want it done now. All right. So book me in for a couple of weeks. I'll keep working on it. And if I haven't figured it out by then, I'll keep the appointment. So of course I couldn't figure it out. And I spent 2 weeks working on it. Show up at his place. He fixes it in about 20 minutes. And I'm thinking, what the fuck am I doing with myself? I'm not a fucking computer programmer. Pardon my French, but it was like, what am I doing?
Right.
So from that point forward, I have never designed my own, computer ever again. I totally hire people to do that. And now I even have a virtual assistant. In fact, she's going to be on my podcast in a week or so. About how to do that sort of thing. How do you hire a virtual assistant? How do you get somebody to help you?
Yeah.
How do you
make
find
a big difference?
Yeah.
And also, though, being able to understand what it is you really want.
Mm.
One of the reasons that I'm really big on this, the delegating thing, is because I don't know if I ever told you this, but for about 2.5 years, I worked with a man. His name was Colonel John Warden, and he was the Gulf War 1990 Gulf War architect for the whole air campaign.
Wow.
And Schwarzkopf, remember when Schwarzkopf used to come to the event? Schwarzkopf was looking for somebody to do it, come up with this strategic plan. They gave him 6 weeks to come up with a complete air campaign. And it's one of the few where they had really clear outcomes. They went in, they got it done, and got out. And when he left the military, he started doing strategic planning. So I worked with him for a couple of years. Our biggest client was McDonald's. We did a lot of work with McDonald's. And one of the things that my job was, we'd go in for a week and do the strategic planning for the team, the leadership team. Mm-hmm. And then there were a lot of plans to be implemented. And my job was to come back every 2 weeks for 6 months and work with the implementation teams. So the first thing that we would start with is I would sit down with the manager and ask a series of questions about what is it that's your real outcome here? How would you measure success? What resources are needed? What kind of skills are needed on the team? And I had a whole series of questions. Doug, they had no idea. They were so vague about what they wanted
Hmm.
and what was, and how it would get measured and all of that. And then they would get mad at people for not doing it right.
All right. Huh. That's funny. I mean, that literally is NLP 101. That is basic stuff. What do you want? How do you know when
Yeah.
you got it?
Yeah.
What specifically? Yeah.
And you
Wow.
would think, and I would go in thinking this was going to be a 30-minute meeting, and I'd be there for 2 hours because I was having to drag out of them all this information. And then I'd go sit with the team. And even one of them was, why did you choose this person? Why is this person on this team for this? What is it about them? Instead of, well, they're the, whatever their title was or something.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I go sit down and talk to people about this, and we walk through. You were chosen on the team for this reason, these reasons, and da da da. And here's what the team is, and here's what it's not, and here's what you have the authority to do. Here's what you don't have the authority to do, and super clear.
Yeah.
And the expression on these people's faces and their enthusiasm to do the work was, I'd never seen it before because I'd worked inside of Robbins and seen how it just got thrown at you.
Uh-huh.
It was amazing. And so that's where I got the understanding. Wasn't so much, I mean, I did need to learn it as a leader in the company and stuff, but it wasn't one that I was resisting. It's just like no one had ever taught me how to do it. And people just expect you to, to delegate to other people or leverage to other people, even when you're outsourcing to a virtual assistant.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
true.
it's very powerful. So that's the second one. And I'm most likely going to do one that's related to talents and strengths, because I feel like that's a really big issue, is having people in the right spot for them.
Yeah.
Not just because you need a body.
Right. Cool.
So,
And then
yeah.
the other ones will come along as they come along.
Yeah, I mean, I have a whole list of possible topics. So what I'm trying to do is really feel what are they needing, and then if I can give them that, then there'll be some other people who need that, I'm guessing, as well. So
I think that's a very cool strategy, to get somebody to pay you to create the seminars and then take them out into the world.
I had that frank conversation with these people. I said, here's my reason I'm doing this for you guys. And I gave them a good deal. But I said, the reason you're getting a good deal is because you're
my guinea pig.
You're my guinea pig.
You're my test audience. Yeah, that's great though. So we will be getting the good stuff when it comes out the other end, like what actually worked.
Yep. Yeah.
Cool.
I remember one time this woman said, Tony's like a big giant juicer. And I go, okay. He just takes all this information and it goes through the juicer, and then he just spits out the important parts.
I'm not sure that's what a juicer does, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah, if you say so, sure.
Yeah, Tony was really good at taking things from all over the place and sort of boiling them down, and maybe a different metaphor, to the simplest important parts. It's interesting. Yeah, the woman that I married, my wife, when I first was dating her and introduced her to Tony back in around 1990, she's mentioned that she was a Alexander Technique teacher. We were at a comedy club, in New York City, and she mentioned that she was an Alexander Technique teacher. And suddenly he was like this lion, like, so what is the central operating principle behind the Alexander Technique? He's totally focused on how did I dissect the Alexander Technique.
I know that. I've seen that many times.
It's the first time I've seen it up close. It was like, it was scary.
I got an opportunity to go to an Aerosmith concert with Tony. There were a bunch of guys that were going, and one of them at the last minute couldn't go, and Becky didn't want to go. I was at their house with Becky, hanging out with Becky, and they didn't, she didn't want to go. And Tony's like, you want to go see Aerosmith? I'm like, yeah, sure. So we go, and we got to go backstage, or not backstage, but in the green room or whatever they call it, after thing. And it was funny because at that point they had wine spritzers and healthy food, and it wasn't this wild, rock party behind. But anyway, Steven Tyler walks up, and Tony went into that mode. So, Steven, that's my impression. Steven, what makes you keep going? He's super casual. And he goes, "Oh, the girls in the front row. That's what keeps me going. I don't know what else to say." But it's interesting because there's a curiosity. One of the things that I think is super interesting about Tony and that is he has a real genuine curiosity.
Absolutely.
And I've had to actually learn more of that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Einstein said he was no smarter than anybody else. He was just a lot more curious than other people, which I'm not sure is actually true. But it was good to But a long time ago, even before that, I was walking down the street with Tony, 1986, 7, something like that. His book had just come out. His first book. Nobody knew who this guy was. Very few people. I mean, I don't think his infomercial was out yet. He was just like
it wasn't at that point. No.
And this guy runs across the street. Runs across 34th Street. It's 2-lane traffic, 34th Street in Manhattan. He made it. He goes,
that's good. I'm glad he made it.
He goes up to Tony and says, "You're Tony Robbins. I read your book." And Tony was like, "Really? Tell me what," just like focused in on this guy, this perfectly strange stranger, right? But suddenly he got the total Robbins treatment. It was like, "Wow, what was it that you really liked about the book? What did you take away from it?" So, in this intense conversation took place for like the next 20 minutes while we were standing on the street corner. And man, that was just amazing.
It's so genuine in him.
Yeah. Oh, really?
He's fascinated by understanding what makes someone tick or what's going on for them. He said a story that I really liked where he said he asked Nelson Mandela. He didn't imitate himself going into Tony mode, but when he told the story, I went, "Oh, he was in Tony mode." And he asked him, "How did you survive?" And he said that Mandela looked at him and with an irritation from the question and said, "I didn't survive. I prepared." And he said, this is the version I heard anyway, but I imagined that I was either going to die in prison and I'd be a martyr for the people, or I was going to get out. And if I got out, I wanted to be prepared to lead the country, including the people that had imprisoned me. So I needed to understand them. I needed to learn their language. I needed to know what made them tick because they were going to be part of my people that I would lead.
Neat.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it is.
So I love that prepared and talk about taking a situation where you're in prison and you're using it to grow and in case you end up leading the country. So
cool. Pretty cool. Well, Deborah, I'm afraid we've run out of time and I want to respect your time. Thank you so much for being here and giving us.
So welcome. I just enjoy hanging with you. I hope everybody got something out of our conversation today. Because we're just having fun here talking. So.
The old days with Tony. But seriously, I'm looking forward to this workshop of yours because I have the highest respect for what you bring. When you finish them with the company that's paying you to develop this thing, I'm sure what comes out the other end will be like, wow, really worth taking. So I'm really
hopefully it'll be useful and clear, but also simple. I like to keep things as simple as I can, and that there's going to be something for everybody.
Well, that's the whole thing. And again, Einstein, I believe it was, said that things should be as simple as possible, but no simpler. Yeah. So yeah, cool beans.
Thank you.
So what's it called? Where do people find out about it? Is it Deborah Russell?
If someone, because I'm doing this with you, what I've already offered is that if anybody wants to come, if you're interested in the workshop, I'm going to give you, I think Doug's going to give you the URL, but you can go to a particular URL that goes into more detail of what the workshop is, but also where you can sign up as a VIP for free.
For free.
For free.
Nice.
So you'll put that down there. And if anybody wants to get the 52 secrets, that's just at deborahrussell.com, and it's at the top of the screen.
Okay. So Deborah, if you go to deborahrussell.com, at the top of the website screen, there's a thing to get the 52 secrets.
Right.
Okay.
And then and you'll put the actual URL for the workshop, and that's the only URL that you can, if you click that one, there's buttons there where you can get it for free, because it's not for free for everybody.
Okay. Very cool. So
All right.
what, can you just tell us what the name is? Is it deborahrussell.com with
it's
a
deborahrussell.com, then / and that's structure - your - day - for - peak - performance -
Okay. Right.
VIP. So it'll be better if you have it down there.
Yeah, I'll definitely put it down there, but I got it. Okay. So structure day for peak performance with dashes in the middle. Cool.
Yeah, and then VIP.
VIP. Okay, beautiful. Thank you so much.
Okay.
That's very generous of you. Appreciate that.
Well, I just want to spread the word, help people with something that I used to struggle with. And I'm not perfect at it. I always think of myself now as I'm being on the curve.
Yeah.
And so for me, I call myself like the queen of time and details. But I say I'm the queen of a country of like 2 people. So on the curve, this is not my nature. It's just something I've learned that's helped me hugely.
Cool. All right.
Cool.
See you next time.
Next time. Bye. Bye, everybody.
This has been the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure seeing you again. Hope to see you again real soon. Come back next week when we have another gripping and exciting episode of the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. And if you want to, you can find out more about us, each and every one of us, at essentialcoachingskills.com. Thanks.